Good evening and welcome back. I'm Kate Fox Reynolds, head of the upper school and an English teacher. My pronouns are she and hers. These are such strange days. A year ago, I'm guessing that you probably could not imagine that you would be able to visit schools that you were interested in while lying in bed, eating dinner with your family, while you argued with your parents, or even as you gazed into somebody else's home. But here we are. And I definitely couldn't imagine that you could ask questions at the same time that I was speaking and it would work. Brave new world, but here we are. So if you have questions, one of the things you can do right now is enter them into the chat directed at Claudine. She's going to gather the questions and eventually we'll ask them of our student and faculty panelists. But first, I'll introduce myself. This is my third year as upper school head, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I personally chose Friends. And I'll say first and foremost, I experienced a sense of real values alignment when I discovered Friends. As a Quaker school, it's a values-driven school with the touchstones of the Quaker spices, as we call them, which stand for simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and stewardship. These really aren't just words in our community, but touchstones that we return to over and over again to guide us in our thinking and decision making and choices. I was also really attracted to the Quaker tradition of really mindful democratic processes. As an administrator, I may be in charge of the decisions in the upper school, but the process of arriving at those decisions are deliberative and consultative with students and faculty. I'll give you an example. Um, like every school, we've been doing a lot virtually, but as we went through this process, I met with faculty, I met with parents, I met with student leaders, even including a Zoom meeting during my vacation in the Adirondacks with seniors, where I consulted them on what are you looking for, what aren't you looking for? Because sometimes what an adult thinks is going to be a really great idea is something that a student has no interest in. So we don't want to launch programming that's going to fall flat. And thirdly, in terms of the Quaker values of the school, it's famous for meeting for worship. You may have heard of this concept. Though Quakers originally started as a branch of the Christian faith, it no longer has any ascriptions in terms of what you must believe to be at a Quaker school or part of a Quaker community, but it does engage in a series of practices. And one of them is meeting for worship, where we gather together and settle into silence for 25 minutes or more, contemplating the light within us all, the dignity and the divine, and setting aside our own agenda to listen to one another testify. And when we're in person, I can't tell you how powerful it is to be in a room of more than 300 students and faculty members in the heart of New York City, and magically everybody quiets themselves. I never have to say, shh, or walk around to quiet anybody. They simply settle into silence. And then anybody in the room is allowed to speak. You could be moved to speak about something that upsets you in your day. You could be moved to speak about how you're feeling about the election at the moment. You could be moved to speak because you just had a really profound interaction with a friend or a teacher and you want to testify to that. And everybody in the room holds your dignity and holds what you need to say as the agenda for the moment. My second reason for coming to Friends was because I loved this student body and the practices of the upper school. The upper school has three main governing bodies for students to join, about 1 million clubs, which Erin Mumford, our Dean of Student Life, can tell you about. But three main governing bodies, one called the Agenda Committee, which really sets the agenda for the upper school, what the students want and need. They also hold traditional meetings, including meeting for announcements, meeting for worship, and they are the leaders for something called Meeting for Business, which is when students bring forward an issue that the community feels passionate about, and they lead the whole meeting and discussion on the issue. So a little over a year ago, we had a meeting for business that was all about hate speech and offensive language. And again, it was a student-run meeting with students rising, students recognizing those who rise, and also calling on the voices that weren't speaking. One student said, I noticed that we've had a lot of upperclassmen speak, and I would like to hear from some 9th and 10th graders whose voices we haven't heard yet. Really inviting in a plethora of voices on the subject. The second committee that is in the upper school that's a governing body is STUFAC, which reads, writes, and executes our community norms, consequences, and is very much involved in restorative justice for those who don't abide by our norms. And the third committee is our service committee, which has a very clear delineated mission around engaging in service using our head, our heart, and our hands, so that it's not simply an exercise of intellectual engagement or deep feelings to serve, but how do we integrate that with our actions, our beliefs, our actions, and our values? And the third thing I need to say about the student body is that I was struck immediately when I came to Friends. When I first sat down in Meeting for Worship and gazed upon the student body, having been at independent schools for my whole career, all of them in New York City but one, I've noticed over the years that teenagers in high schools are pressured in various ways to conform in terms of their gender identities, to conform in terms of their clothing, to conform in terms of how they wear their hair. And Friends has so much room for how to express yourself. I saw students with great big afros. I saw students who had their hair close cropped. I saw young men with long hair. I saw young women with short hair. I saw gender non-conforming students with purple and blue hair. And that variety of individual expression and freedom to be yourself really struck me, that this ideal of honoring the dignity and divine in each student really does allow them to experiment and become who they are. There's enough freedom here. And finally, I believe Friends is the perfect size school. With just under 300 students for the whole upper school. Each grade has around 80 students, with approximately 30 new students entering the 9th grade. It's a size where teachers and students can really get to know one another well, and yet it's big enough to offer a great diversity of classes and challenges for students, from multivariable calculus at the highest level in math to a unique English elective on Franz Kafka and his heirs. We offer Arabic at all levels, including the AP level. We have 4 different biology classes right now. We have history electives on the Black Atlantic, the Middle East, and rock and roll. We have a wide range of PE classes ranging from capoeira to yoga to rock climbing when we can do those things, and the performing and visual arts classes, but that both teach the skills of those arts as well as critical thinking about those skills. So now we're going to turn to our question and answer segment. And I'm really deeply grateful to be joined by a panel of juniors and teachers and administrators. And I'm going to introduce them to you as quickly as I can so you can hear a voice other than mine. First of all, we have Hassan Wilson, who is the assistant head of the upper school and a biology teacher. For a long time, he served as a trustee of the school, as well as department head of the science department, and this is his 17th year at Friends. Next, I'd like to introduce Erin Mumford, Dean of Student Life and a computer science teacher. This is her 10th year at Friends. Erin has spent many years coaching in the school, including varsity volleyball and track and field. She's also a faculty advisor to clubs, and her focus is on student voice and student-driven programming in the upper school. And among our students are Auden, who is a junior who commutes from New Jersey and joined Friends in 9th grade. He's a member of our agenda committee, the psychology club, the business club, the stock investing club, and he's a writer for the school newspaper, The Insight. He also takes classes in yoga, AP chemistry, AP psychology, AP history, American literature, pre-calculus, and Spanish. Jana, I would like to welcome, is a junior taking our advanced our advanced placement US history class, biology, the history of jazz, American literature, pre-calculus, and Spanish. Jana is a member of the Creative Writing Club, the Black Culture Club, and RAD, which stands for Raising Awareness and Advocating Diversity. And she was among the winners of our Youth Philanthropy Initiative in 9th grade when she arrived at Friends. And last but not least is Ethan, a varsity basketball player and baseball player who also takes upper school history, AP history, biology, American literature, pre-calculus, and Spanish, and he's attended Friends since kindergarten. So I'm going to start us off with a couple of questions, and then we'll turn to those that you submitted to Claudine. Auden, I'd like to start with you. If you could talk to us a little bit about being a new student to Friends, can you tell us about the transition from your previous school to Friends, how you made friends, how you felt supported by teachers as you got used to new workloads, expectations, and so on?
I would love to, Kate. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Auden. I'm a junior at Friends. And coming from my old school, it was a very small middle school compared to Friends, actually, nearly only 30 kids in a grade. So I knew a lot of the kids in my middle school for a long time. So coming to Friends was kind of a shock. And I was really worried about joining this new community and making friends. But the community actually openly welcomed me, and it was such a great transition and a smooth transition. I felt included in there was a bunch of new student orientation and activities for new students that was put together, and I felt really welcomed. Specifically on this new student orientation day, there was a moment where the new students got to actually meet the returning ninth graders, and there was just this like element of surprise and joy amongst all of us that really like warmed my heart and really made me feel welcomed when all the returning students like started like clapping and smiling and cheering. And I would say there's like a lot of opportunities within the school to get involved and to make new friends. As Kate mentioned, I partake in a few clubs, and I think clubs are definitely a great way to make new friends, and especially about things you're interested in and things you're passionate about. And I would definitely say that teachers are here to support you no matter what, especially being new to the Friends community. A lot of the curriculum was new to me, or a lot of the grading systems were new to me. And teachers would always reach out and ask if I need to schedule a meeting, or if I needed any extra work, or if I needed any help. And I just always felt welcomed and taken care of.
Thank you so much, Auden. Jana, I'm going to turn to you now, and I'm wondering if you could describe an experience that you've had at Friends in the classroom or elsewhere when you were able to share or experience a passion, a perspective, or some part of your identity in a meaningful way.
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you all for your time. I'm so excited about this. I just want to reflect on the YPI experience, which every freshman has in their freshman year. So YPI stands for the Youth Philanthropy Initiative, and it's an organization that each freshman takes part of, and where you collaborate with different people in your grade, and you get to choose a topic that you all are mutually very passionate about. So my group chose homelessness in New York City. So homelessness, as I think all of us know, is an incredibly prevalent issue, and I really want to take a deeper dive into like the discrepancy and how it affects people of different backgrounds and how it affects families in New York City too. So through a series of presentations, we began to collect information about homelessness and really start to actually educate ourselves and just completely just get a whole new understanding and a whole new perspective. And we were able to pair up with a nonprofit organization. And through the series of presentations, each group could potentially win $5,000 to give to that nonprofit organization. So after the presentations that we did, my group very fortunately was able to get the $5,000 and potentially help so many homeless individuals. Now, this meant so much to me because I've always wanted to see how my support can extend past the Friends community, but more on like a citywide and nationwide way. And I wanted to see how I could support different communities, especially marginalized communities. And I also saw an aspect of teachers really taking care of us beyond the academic, because obviously presentations are a little bit nerve-wracking, and we were doing these in front of the whole school, and teachers made sure that you had support no matter what, every step of the way. I would consider myself a pretty shy person. Hopefully there's some shy people in here that can relate. So I noticed a huge duality in how this nonprofit experience and working with the nonprofit helped me, and how I was able to help different people. I was helped because I was able to gain a totally new confidence. I was able to build my platform, and I was able to see myself do something that was completely out of my comfort zone. And I was able to help so many homeless individuals and families in ways that I could have never imagined. So I'm incredibly grateful for that experience, and it really defined my Friends experience as a whole.
Thank you so much, Jana. Ethan, I'm going to turn to you now. And in the spirit of our school's theme this year, taking care, can you tell us some of the ways that you have felt taken care of in our school?
Thanks for that, Kate, and thank you everybody for being here tonight. So I'd say both teachers and students are in uncharted territory right now, and are trying to figure out how to have effective classes while at the same time sustain our well-being. And so an example I have of a teacher looking out for us is of my math teacher, Coleman. So last week we had a very heavy academic week with a big unit test on Friday. So Coleman, understanding the amount of work coupled with online school and the current circumstances could cause some stress, sought to help us through two main ways. First, during this academically rigorous week, he frequently checked in with us via Zoom and email to see how we were feeling about the test and if there was any way he could help. Then, this week, he changed up the structure of the class to make up for last week's hard work, giving us an assignment that's due at the end of this week with no additional homework. At the end of class this Tuesday, he also announced that tomorrow's class, which is the first period of the day, will be asynchronous, meaning that we don't have to go on Zoom and that we can work on the assignment individually. But then he added that what he really wanted us to do during this first period, asynchronous class, was to sleep in. And that really resonated with me. I think that's a really great example of a teacher taking care of their students. I mean, Coleman not only wants to help us from an academic perspective, but is also looking out for our well-being during these times. And I think that's something that all my teachers right now are keeping in mind. And I think I felt great support from all my teachers this year so far.
Thank you so much, Ethan. I'm going to turn to Claudia now to hear some questions from our audience.
Yes, so Kate, families were interested in getting more information about our advisory program and how it works.
Great. Jana, maybe you could start us off with that.
So the advisory program is great on campus and virtually. There's definitely so many ways that advisories have been implemented into our virtual world. Specifically on Wednesdays, we have tutorials and programming to make sure that we can see our advisors and have those connections that we need. And on campus, we have advisory once a week, and we get to play games or maybe have a really a deep conversation about how your week is going. Maybe you're having a great week and you just want to express that to your advisory and to your advisor. you can totally do that. And me and my advisor have gotten so close. She was on maternity leave for a little while, so we were able to like build a new connection after that. And advisories just help you in so many ways. It's a support outside the academic, and it's support inside the academic. They're always there for you, and they will always support you no matter what you're trying to do and no matter what path you're trying to take.
Thank you for sharing that student experience. I'll just add for students and families that advisories at Friends are very intimate. It's no more than 7 or 8 students, usually a mix of 4 or 5 returning students from the middle school and 3 or 4 students who are new to the community. And we found it's a really wonderful way to have at least one adult in the community who knows you in your fullest self, is tracking all of the things that you're doing academically, as well as your commitments to clubs, and getting to know your parents as well. We have student parent advisor conferences that happen a couple of times a year that are led by students. And so that students, advisors, and parents are all on the same page about how things are going. Claudine, you want to offer another question?
Yes, so families are interested in, for the students that joined us in 9th grade, what aspect of Friends stuck out to them during the application process and why they chose to attend Friends?
Thanks. Auden, why don't you start us out?
So yeah, I think one thing that definitely stuck out for me while I was visiting friends and during the application process was the sense of community. It's just like, as everyone's been mentioning, the amount of support that students receive from teachers as well as from their peers, or even from the faculty and staff, like who run the school, like the people who help us cross the sidewalk or across the street. It's just this sense of community that I don't that's very special to Friends, and something that really drew me in because during my high school process, or during my time in high school, I wanted to feel taken care of and I wanted to feel that support. And I just think that Friends really gave the best opportunity for me to feel that way.
Thank you, Auden. Claudia, you want to offer us another question?
Yes, so families want to understand what our schedule looks like, especially because our periods are 70 minutes long. How does that translate to the full week schedule?
Great. I'm going to turn to our assistant head of upper school, Hassan Wilson, to talk about this question. And Hassan, maybe you could share with families both the old schedule and the current schedule briefly.
Sorry, sure. So our schedule pre-pandemic was an 8-day cycle with periods that were 70 minutes. Prior to that, we had like 8 periods with 45 minutes. And the feedback that we received was that the day was so frenetic that students would go from one thing to another, and just felt like there wasn't time to excel. So we moved to extended periods so that students wouldn't meet with all their classes every single day. So you would meet with your classes every other day for 70 minutes. And then there was a collaboration period that was added into the schedule in which all students and all teachers were free. So that allowed for time for students to meet with teachers or students to meet with other students to work on projects, or if they just wanted to grab, a snack or something. And that led to a really slower paced day. Students were able to focus on just a few classes a day. And we were able to do that by extending it to an 8-day period. Now what we're doing while we're doing during the pandemic, what we're doing is we moved away from an 8-day schedule, and we have Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, we have our classes that are 60 minutes with some community period and collaboration time in the day in which all students and teachers are free. We have an extended lunch period because one thing we saw was that during the spring, a lot of students and teachers were opting to meet during lunch. So we decided for when we built the schedule this year to extend that period. So lunch is actually 90 minutes long, and that allows for more collaboration time for those meetings, for students to grab something to eat, as well as there's some programming, some special programming during that time as well. And then on Wednesdays, we have that extended advisory programming time that Jane had mentioned earlier. During the morning, there are things where the advisor gets to check in. There might be certain celebrations and games. So like yesterday we had a Halloween assembly where we marched with our costumes and we're able to cheer each other on. And then in the afternoon, we have tutorials, and those are one-on-one or small group meetings with a teacher. So students are actually required to touch base with an adult, just making sure that we're taking care of our students. So it can be a review session, or it can be meeting with an advisor, or it can be a meeting with a classroom teacher. And so that's our schedule right now.
Thank you so much. I know there are still lots of questions, and I also really want to honor everybody's time. So we are going to stop here. I just want to add that I understand how difficult it is for students and families to consider a school when you can't actually walk inside it and visit it and experience how it feels. I hope you've gotten a little bit of sense of the people in the place that we call friends. Meanwhile, if you want a more intimate experience with our students, please join us at an Ask Me Anything session. An Ask Me Anything session is a roundtable conversation between our student ambassadors and our applicant families, providing yet another lens to help you envision yourself at Friends. We so appreciate your time this evening, and thanks to our student panelists. I'll let you get back to your homework and test prep now. And thank you to our faculty and admission staff as well. Good night.